Good afternoon. It's just after 1 o'clock. It's Monday, the 21st of July, 2014. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host on my own, Brian Gerrish. And I'm going to say, I think we've got an extremely interesting news for you today. We're going to have on the programme a little bit later a gentleman called Devan Maistry. He's going to be telling us his experience of challenging the BBC over their claims to uphold wonderful standards. I think you're going to be very, very surprised, or not, at what this gentleman has to say, but it's going to take us straight back into the very dirty, mucky heart of the BBC. It was a little while ago that the UK Column News analysed and exposed the true scale of corruption at the heart of the BBC, and we revealed the secret and dangerous political agenda being funded on the backs of the licence payer. This is just part of the sort of stuff that we can see over the BBC, of course. And here we are, the story of the BBC, our public purpose and how we're funded. So the BBC, very, very proud of their public purpose and, of course, tied in with the Charter. We get a mission statement to enrich people's lives with programmes and services that inform, educate and entertain. And we've got a vision, which is to be the most creative organisation in the world. And here are the values: trust, audiences at the heart of everything we do, pride in delivering quality and value, creativity, lifeblood of the organisation. We respect each other and celebrate diversity. We are one BBC. Great things happen when we work together. And the Royal Charter and Agreement sets out 6 public purposes for the BBC: sustaining citizenship and civil society, promoting education and learning, stimulating creativity and cultural excellence, representing the UK, its nations, regions and communities, bringing the UK to the world and the world to the UK, delivering to the public the benefit of emerging communications technologies. So, how is the BBC living up to its high reputation and standards? Let's speak to our guest today, Devan Maistry. Now, you have been having quite a battle with the BBC over these very issues of the BBC values. And if I understand from our brief conversation earlier this morning, you've been working for were working for the BBC for some years as a journalist and also a producer. You were involved in the Asian network. You've started to see some interesting management changes. That's led you into conflict with the BBC, and then what happens? You are the person taking on the BBC for failing to live up to their own values. So I'm going to hand over to you and say, tell us in your own words what's actually been happening to you.
Well, Brian, I think the background to this is fairly straightforward. There was a change of management in 2005. There was an enthusiasm for promoting and youth programming and branding it accordingly. Some of us spoke out about the fact that even in the interests of extending more popular programming, one must be careful about these very values that you've just highlighted and which are absolutely serious. British law allows and protects certain serious beliefs. The first step of this battle was therefore to show that the BBC's aims and values amount or constitute what could be regarded as a philosophical belief. This is a belief that can be seriously taken and which will then therefore be protected in law. The BBC, and this for me is the sheer betrayal of it all, the BBC argued that its values and its aims were no more than a mission statement, nothing that could constitute a belief. It also argued that if I was right and that if public aims and values like this could be regarded as philosophical beliefs, this would put people in the NHS in a position to claim that they needed to work according to their consciences. My simple point at this stage is that by arguing and by betraying, traducing, diminishing, misrepresenting, I believe, its values before a tribunal, the BBC has seriously undermined its cardinal value, which is trust, and let down both the public and its employees.
So what happened in simple terms? They challenged you and then eventually they sack you. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's fairly accurate. What happens is you voice reservations as senior journalists, and as you are committed to, you're not directly opposing policy, etc., but you're reminding that our business, the public interest, the service we provide, the BBC values guide the way in which inform our work and our public purpose. So you've got to, no matter how you make programs, at the end of the day, they must conform to these values which define the BBC's essence, its soul, its mission.
Yeah.
To answer your question, management gets upset about it. They don't like being challenged. They're marginalized. It's the usual thing. And it's not just me. I've seen others suffer much, much worse, which is probably the thing that affected me more. I've been through some of this rough stuff before. But this is what happens. You get good journalists being marginalized. You get others being silenced. I have worked in apartheid newsrooms, and I will frankly say that I have never come across more fearful newsrooms than in Britain. So to answer your question, and just to wrap it up, Brian, yes, there are all kinds of forms of marginalization, intimidation, etc., and then they proceed to a capability process, which in this case ran for 3 years. And strangely enough, across that entire 3 years, nobody inquired as to what were the performance issues themselves. Those were only investigated after I was dismissed, and then turned out to be quite ludicrous in a court of law, where the BBC says, I am unable to produce a basic package, but admits in writing that I have been producing substantial documentaries which they were broadcasting even up to the time when we went to court.
So essentially you get undermined at work. That's how they did it. Bit of psychological bullying, seems to me. You're undermined. Eventually they've pushed you out of the organisation. And what is it you then do? Is that the point at which you start going to a tribunal?
Right. At that stage, you have no further recourse. The BBC has conducted its internal investigation and found after 14 years you don't even have entry-level skills, which is remarkable. It's also insulting. It damages your career, destroys it. But the point is, your only recourse then is to go to an employment tribunal, which I did. And the first stage of this was to find whether I had grounds, philosophical grounds, belief grounds, for claiming discrimination. So
you go to the tribunal. What was the final authority that you had to use? Was that a top-tier tribunal, or was it actually a court hearing where this final decision was made supporting the BBC?
The first tribunal had to decide whether I had a philosophical belief which could be protected. They said yes, rejected all the BBC's arguments that its value system just was a mission statement, and said I could proceed to a tribunal. However, at the next tribunal, the BBC argued that 10 managers could not have known that I believed in the BBC's higher purpose. This is important, that the 10 managers said, how do we know that you believe in this higher purpose of the BBC? And the answer to that is very simple. The BBC values, which you've just shown up so neatly, the BBC's entire constitution, rooted in the Charter, all that it says about its values. But most importantly, the BBC values must be followed by everybody. And if everybody has to follow them, then everybody knows we have a shared belief in the BBC's higher purpose. This is no secret. This is open knowledge. People are proud about it. But the BBC argued that it could not have known that I believed in its higher values, and my argument was very simple. At the BBC itself encourages such a belief. However, at this tribunal, it was found, on the evidence of the BBC, which was simply an assertion that its values are effectively a mission statement, a second tribunal contradicted the first tribunal, believed the BBC, and found that the BBC values are really nothing more than a mission statement.
And they actually quoted the NHS in part of their defence, i.e. that this was the same system, just a mission statement, which the NHS used.
In the first tribunal, which had to decide on the issue of whether I held a philosophical belief, that is, the BBC's values and aims amounted or constituted the basis of a philosophical belief, the BBC said, if we believe this, and if the court allows this, then we'll have people at the NHS saying that the work they do also conforms to a really important philosophical belief. And I believe it does in any case. But I found it odd that not only were you degrading or downplaying the BBC's values, you were also attempting to sort of cut off people at the NHS from claiming a deeply, if they held this belief, it would amount to a philosophical belief.
Yeah. I think what you are telling us is vital information, because we're now seeing really what's going on at the heart of the BBC. A BBC that boasts about its standards until you actually say, well, are you going to live up to your standards? And then what does it do? It changes those standards.
I just want to finish by saying, Brian, when the second tribunal rejected the judgment of the first tribunal, this matter then went to the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal was asked, these are the points of law. And these points were very simple. Is there any evidence to justify the tribunal reaching a finding that the BBC values are a mission statement? There was no such evidence, is my claim. And if there is such evidence, then it means that everything you've showed us about the BBC at the beginning of this section doesn't make any difference, because that's not what the BBC believes in.
Well, we've got it, haven't we? We're now at the point where we can see the heart of the BBC, but of course what you're also illustrating is the fact that the moment we get near the tribunal system, and remember, of course, that this is a closed-door operation. We haven't got a jury sitting in judgment to this. We've simply got supposedly learned judges making decisions. Devan, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us. We will be speaking with you. I'll give you a call after the programme today, and I very much hope that we can get into this matter over the BBC in a lot more detail. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks for taking an interest in what I think is a deeply important issue, which is being ignored by the NUJ and a whole host of organisations. Thank you again.
Okay. Just to reinforce what we've just heard, and I apologise, well, I don't, for showing this again because it's so important. This was the boss of BBC Radio 4. Have a look at what was being said about him. He claimed that female journalists do not have thick enough skin to deal with the show's incredibly difficult environment. What is that environment? Bullying, lies, cover-ups? Well, Mike, you found this article today, which really, I think, says a lot.
Yes, because, of course, anybody that's been following the Jill Dando case for a long time knows that there's never been any satisfactory explanation as to why this woman was murdered. But perhaps we start to get a clue here. So this is an ex-colleague who used to work on Crimewatch, I believe is what the Star is saying, but who wants to remain nameless, is saying that Jill Dando had been investigating high-level paedophile activity, had taken what she discovered to the BBC, who had tried to bury the story. She continued to push, and the colleague says, I don't recall the names of all the stars. Now, she was talking about high-level paedophile rings, including high people, very famous names within the BBC, of course. I don't recall the names of the stars. Now, I don't really want to implicate anyone, but Jill said they were surprisingly big names, and he went on to say, I think she was quite shocked when told about images of children and that information on how to join this horrible paedophile ring was freely available. And so she continued to push, and I suppose the point of this article really is, was this part of the reason, or perhaps the whole reason, that she was eventually murdered a couple of years later?
Well, we're going to keep digging, and we're going to ask our audience to keep digging into these affairs. Amazing connections. If you start to have a look at Jill Dando and the people around her, it certainly gets pretty deep and interesting very quickly. And of course, they're prepared to use heavy forces. The Mail here has got a very good story where the editor of a local newspaper had a heavy mob arrive at his offices in 1984 after Barbara Castle had passed him a dossier naming paedophiles in Westminster, and he was effectively threatened with going to jail for a long time if he dared publish it. Now let's think about that. A man daring to publish information about child abusers is the one that's put in jail. So that was a heavy mob of special branch, and the conclusion common sense conclusion must be that Britain's police forces and indeed security forces are being used to protect the establishment paedophiles in Britain. Just a final comment, I should have asked the question for our BBC whistleblower, Devan, who spoke earlier. I don't remember seeing any BBC reporting on these very, very important tribunal cases. So I wonder whether we could ask the audience to help us by researching to see whether the BBC bothered to report on one of its own employees challenging the BBC management over their failure to live up to their own standards. Was that actually put in the public domain by the BBC, or was there a media blackout? I think that brings us to the end of today's programme. Please keep these emails going out to MPs asking them what they are doing, because this is about real democracy in action and putting these people on the spot. So don't think an email to an MP does nothing. One email does a little bit, 10,000 does quite a lot. So it's up to all of us to take this fight to the doorstep, these despicable people who are clearly not doing their jobs. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Bye-bye.